Email him, it's snowing.
You're live, Mayor Hudson.
Okay, let's call to order the City Council meeting for February 22nd, 2022. Before the roll call, the City Attorney has an announcement.
Good evening. To help prevent the spread of COVID-19, Assembly Bill 361 suspends certain provisions of the Brown Act so that public meetings like this one can be held by teleconference. At this point, I would ask the mayor to recognize me after the roll call to confirm certain matters for the record.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Armstrong.
Here.
Councilmember Perkins is absent this evening. Councilmember Zafar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Burrows.
Here.
And Mayor Hudson.
Here, we recognize the City Attorney.
Thank you. And based on the responses to the roll call, please let the record reflect that all council members can hear the proceedings clearly. And if there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each council member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that the persons representing themselves to be council members are who they say they are.
We are.
And seeing no objection, I'll turn the meeting back over to you, Mr. Mayor, and remind you that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first item on the agenda tonight are our announcements. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
No, none this evening.
Okay, that's always a good start. Let's go to item 3.2. If you wish to speak under public comment on any item on the agenda, please click the raise your hand button on your computer or *9 on your telephone to request to speak when public comment has been taken on the agenda item. You will then be unmuted when it is your turn to make your comments for up to 3 minutes. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Item 3.3, boards, committee, and commission meetings. A complete list of upcoming meetings may be found on the city's website at www.sanramon.ca.gov. Subscription service is available at the link for automatic meeting notification. Contact the city clerk with questions, 925-973-2539. Public comment at this time. The public is permitted to address the city council on 4 items. First item. These are items that are on the consent calendar, including requests to pull an item from the consent calendar and the reason why you wish to pull the item or items. Please note that the decision to remove the item from the consent calendar is strictly at the discretion of the city council. 2, requests for future agenda items. 3, special presentation items under section 6 of tonight's agenda, and we do have one presentation. And you may also ask for items that are not on the agenda or discuss items that are not on the agenda when the city council or within the city council's jurisdiction. I'm dragging these out. Okay, public comment is now open. If you wish to speak under public comment, as I told you before, raise your hand, feature on Zoom, or dial *9 when it's your turn to talk and call upon you by name. If provided, we have 2 so far. Our remarks are limited up to 3 minutes per person, and the clock will be running on the Zoom screen. The speaker's microphone will then be muted once the we're going to be at once the allotted time has expired. Looks like we have 2 people that wish to speak. So let's go with Joyce Carr first and then Jim Blickenstaff.
Good evening.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi. I spoke on the topic that I'm going to speak on tonight. I spoke on the same topic, the Planning Commission meeting the other night, but I wanted to talk to both of you. And what I spoke about was that while we're having this horrible problem with global warming, fires, worst drought in 1,000 years, we're being told by the state of California that we have to have these massive housing projects added to our cities. And to me, the problem is not the housing, it's the global warming and the drought. Our residents here in San Ramon, I believe, deserve to know where, because this is in my mind constantly, where East Bay Mud plans on getting the water to serve the current residents now, plus the new residents that will be coming in the future. I would love to hear from a knowledgeable East Bay Mud representative on what their plans are for getting this water to not only San Ramon, but to the other cities that are going to be affected by this. I asked the Planning Commission for this as well. I've not heard back from anybody, but I would appreciate maybe hearing back from a staff member, someone who could let me know if it would be possible to have someone attend one of the meetings and talk about, from East Bay Mud, and talk about what their plan is, where they're going to be getting the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jim Blickenstaff.
Hello, hello, Mayor and Council. I gave you some written comments earlier, and I realized I had a couple other items I wanted to add to that, so I'll do that very briefly. Recently, a state legislature told a Pleasanton council member when they were talking about housing, he said basically, "You ain't seen nothing yet." That was quite ominous, and it implies that as bad as it is right now, they plan to continue with this housing crisis mandate they've given themselves to dump all these numbers on cities. And I see a total disregard for the city's perspective of maintaining their cities in a quality of life, attractive way. That doesn't seem to register for these outside agencies. It's a real threat. Individually, cities don't have a chance. Sometimes cities actually fight amongst themselves how to allocate RENA numbers, whatever. And it's very divisive, and you don't have a chance against the state, the governor, and all the powerful lobbyists in Sacramento. So I asked San Ramon to get proactive in engaging with the defense of San Ramon and other cities that are in the same boat you are. And that would include getting active in groups like CALE, a local group with Pleasanton and some of the local cities that are getting more involved with how to protect cities from this state push. And then there's a state initiative that's being gathering signatures right now to reinforce the rights of the cities to govern their own jurisdictions. It's amazing we haven't even have to have an initiative for that, but it's getting that bad to where cities aren't even governing the jurisdictions to which our officials were elected. It's being taken away by outside agencies. And that's offensive on a lot of levels, whether you're pro-growth or slow growth. That's just something that doesn't feel right in a democratic society. And I think we need a reinforcement of the rights of cities to govern themselves. So this is all coming down the road. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And by the time this push by the state is over, I'm afraid we won't even recognize San Ramon as the way we see it today. And it'll just be another overbuilt, claustrophobic, traffic clogged city. And I'd like to prevent that now rather than be sorry about it in 20 years. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jim. Sue Bach, and then call in user one.
Thank you for unmuting me. Hi. Thank you for listening tonight and serving our community. I have to reiterate Joyce Carr's comments about where we're going to get the water for the new residents that we will be having to fill the housing that we are required to have here in San Ramon and elsewhere in California. And I totally understand the need for the housing because we do have a major shortage of housing nationwide. However, that's only my comment about Joyce's comments, because drought is just part of the issue when it comes to climate warming. When you have a planet who's starting to kick us in the teeth with the efforts of the changing climate, including the hailstorm that we had today, which is totally unusual for San Ramon. And I wanted to find out whether or not you're going to continue the Earth Day proclamation that was issued last year, and whether or not we have activities that the city is going to support for Earth Day, Earth Week. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Sue. Call-in user 1.
Hello, councils. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I would like to pull the following items from the consent agenda: 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.9, and 5.10.
Okay, why do you want to pull 5.4?
5.4, there is an item about drones, and I would like to know about 2 things on the item. Number one, why is it that it's just listed as drones, but then the prices are from $959 all the way to $497.34? It just seems odd that
Okay,
there are
no,
such differences in the
we'll ask
prices.
the council if they want to do it. 5.5, why did you want to pull it?
You don't have that luxury. This is by Brown's Act that I have the right to pull consent agenda. You don't have the luxury to deny my request to pull consent agenda.
I'll ask one more time. Call-in user 1, why do you want to pull any of these items? You gave me the reason for 5.5. Can you give a reason why you want to pull the item?
For 5 point what?
6, 5, 7, 9, and 10.
Okay, so for 5.6, let me go back to the agenda. Please bear with me. Let me go back to the, so 5 point, I think I also wanted to pull 5.5, but I didn't give you the reason. The reason is, okay, I think you guys need to review it, because today they're already talking about going back to physical meeting at the county level. So I would like you to please review that. And then 5.6, okay, we already have a logo. It doesn't make any sense that you guys are spending $150,000 to design a separate graphic design. Why? I don't
Okay,
understand
Colin,
why.
why do you want to pull 5.7?
Okay, so 5.7 is, okay, so this is about software licensing and hosting service. I would like to know, this is hosting of what? Hosting of any personal information from the residents? I mean, what is it hosting? Because it is not to exceed $359,000. It's quite a bit of amount. I don't know what that means, because you guys are already using a lot of
5.9
outside
and
service.
5.10, why did you want to pull them?
5.9, okay, so this is about sports lighting. And as far as I know, there is nothing wrong with those lighting. I'm not sure why we need to spend $378,000, you know, to just replace the lighting. I don't know if anybody inside the city hall knows some vendor, and this is a way to, I don't know, make some kickbacks or anything. There
I'm
has
trying
to be
to
a
keep this
reason
to
why.
3 minutes. What, last thing, why do you want to pull 5.10?
So 5.10, vehicle replacement. I'm not sure what this is for. Is this for the police vehicle? If it's for the police vehicle, why is it that it has to be a charger replacement vehicle? What does that mean? Charger replacement, does it mean it's electric, or does it mean that, you know, the existing vehicle chargers have broken down? I have the right to pull these items. It just seems really fishy, and the total of these items exceeds $1.5 million. I have the right to ask.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak to public comment? Are there any written comments that we've received?
You did receive 2 written comments for this item.
Okay, I had Jim's. What was the other one?
Kathy Gulai.
Okay. Okay, so everybody has copies of those. We will now, seeing no other wishes, no one else wishing to speak, we'll close the public comment. The items before the consent calendar. Personally, I see no reason to pull 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, or 10. What is the pleasure of the council? Is there anyone who wishes to pull any items from the consent calendar?
I can move 5.1 through 5.10.
Okay,
I think there are details in the full report as to what each of these line items means.
I do too. Is there a second?
I can second. The one question regarding the Charger, right? That is the brand. I think it's a Dodge Charger is the
Yeah.
brand, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
not
all
like
it is.
Yeah, I second.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Safar,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Veros,
Yes.
Mayor Hudson.
Yes,
That passes
Okay.
4-0.
passes 4-0, and Councilmember Perkins is here in spirit, but we're not going to take his vote. Okay, next item is there are, well, that was item 5. There is one presentation for the evening, and I would like to read it if I may. That is where it is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of San Ramon recognizing February of 2022 as Black History Month. Whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development. And whereas in 1926, famous historian Dr. Carter G. Woodson established what would become Black History Month to bring special awareness of African American accomplishments and their contributions to American history. And whereas the 2022 national theme for the observance is Black Health and Wellness, and whereas the observance of Black History Month will celebrate the contributions and breakthroughs of Black professionals, as well as speaking to the cultural richness of those non-traditional health and wellness practitioners. And whereas the City of San Ramon continues to work toward being an inclusive community in which all citizens, past, present, and future, are respected and recognized for their contributions and potential contributions to our community, the state, the country, and the world. And whereas the City of San Ramon is proud to honor the history and contributions of African Americans in our community and support the theme of honoring Black families who are part of our city landscape. And whereas the City of San Ramon will join with the nation in celebrating the 96th National Black History Month by honoring the essential contributions, sacrifices, and accomplishments African Americans have made to the U.S. as part of American history. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of San Ramon recognizes the month of February 2022 as Black History Month and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all. Dated 2/22/22 and signed by the Mayor, Dave Hudson. Do we have anyone who would wish to speak to this from the council? I don't see any.
Is anybody receiving this or?
No one in particular, no. It's for the whole month. Any, I guess the last time I asked him is, are there any comments before we move on?
Yeah, I would just say thank you, Mayor, for recognizing the Black History Month. I'm sure our residents who are listening to us, who are hearing this recognition, it's just another part that we make sure that we're inclusive of everybody and recognize everyone here in the City of San Ramon. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, Sridhar.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Hudson, for the proclamation of Black History Month. You know, this is a moment that we all should take a chance or opportunity to reflect on the past successes of and challenges of African Americans and look to the future about how we can improve our society to live up to the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice. So thanks for the proclamation.
No, thank you. Mark?
Thanks also for the proclamation. I've been public service at the federal level for a long time, and this proclamation is consistent with what I've seen over the years, and it's appropriate recognition, and I think it's a good move on the part of San Ramon. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you, staff, for a good proclamation. There are at this time no city council appointments. There's no unfinished business. We're moving all the way up to 10, new business. This is a resolution 2022-28 authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Silva Gates Construction for construction of the Crow Canyon Road widening and all the rest of the stuff that you can read there. We are going to get a staff report from Robin Bartlett, the Public Works Division Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council.
Evening.
This is a pretty substantial project, so I would like to give you a brief overview of the project. If I can just start a slideshow here, I will share my screen. Oops, excuse me. See if I can get this done properly. And are you able to
Looks like a brown
see
line.
this?
Yeah.
Does
Looks
that
like
work?
a widening project.
So this is the Crow Canyon Road widening project. And here's where it will be. This is from Al Costa Boulevard to St. George Road. And this project is a mitigation for the Doherty Valley development and is funded by developer fees. This is the first part of the project and will be located in the area of the greatest traffic. This receives the traffic that not only comes from Danville and up from the Doherty Valley, but from all the areas in between before reaching the 680 and the center of San Ramon. So a little bit about the project itself. That includes widening to 3 lanes in both directions. It will also add a buffered bike lane in both directions. The existing street lighting will be replaced and the existing landscaping will be replaced. There will be upgrades to the sidewalk and ADA access on the south side, while the north side will receive a path. As part of the project, the road will be repaved and signals will be improved at all of the intersections within the core of the project. The project is anticipated to start in spring of this year and will be completed by the end of summer 2023. Contractor will be providing us with a detailed schedule once the project is awarded. Of course, with a project of this magnitude, the key concern is traffic impacts. The traffic will be handled with 1 lane open in each direction at all times. In addition, wherever possible, we will have additional lanes open. There will also be bike access at all times and pedestrian access at all times. Contractor is required to give us a detailed traffic control plan, which we'll be reviewing, and staff anticipates that the construction and traffic control and phasing will be very similar to what residents observed for the Bollinger Canyon Road widening project. Along with all of those traffic concerns comes the need for public outreach. Staff has already described this project in 2 city newsletters. And we have created a web page with a direct email for questions or concerns. We'll be installing changeable message signs at each end of the project, and additional signs will be added by the contractor as appropriate. There will also be project-specific signs within the and immediately adjacent to the construction site. Contractor is required to do a mailing within a 1,000-foot radius of the site along its entire length. And there will be pre-construction communication with the HOAs and golf course. This has actually already taken place and will be continued throughout the project, particularly as it reaches new phases. Staff will continue to use social media such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to communicate with residents about the project. With regard to the bids, we received 7 bids for this project. All of these contractors are substantial companies with extensive experience in the area. And as I think you can see from these 3 low bids, it was a pretty tight grouping on the low bids. So we're strongly believe that we've received a pretty good bid for this project. However, that being said, it's still about 20% above the engineer's estimate, which I think reflects some of the price increases we've seen recently. With regard to the funding, $175,000 comes from the city's traffic improvement fund. $16,800,000 comes from the Southern Contra Costa Joint Exercise of Powers Authority, SCC JIPA Regional Impact Fee. As I mentioned, this is developer impact fees associated with the Doherty Valley. The SCC JIPA funds can only be used for specific traffic mitigation projects listed in the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement, of which this is one. With that, that's my summary. And do you have any questions?
Thanks.
It's better when I'm
Robin.
not on mute, isn't it?
Sorry.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sridhar.
So thanks for the presentation, Robin. One quick question. So I really like that buffer lanes for the bike. So are we planning to add green color space wherever it is required so that it will be more visible in those bikes?
Yes, that's incorporated into the project with the buffered bike lanes.
Excellent. And one more thing is regarding the social media. Looks like you already took care. Let's add next door to it, I think. So that should be.
Certainly.
So those are only my 2 questions.
Okay, Mark, you're unmuted. You're up.
Yeah, just a quick question. Just educate me here. Are these bids, when we get the bids, are they sealed bids?
Yes, they are all opened at the same time and read off publicly.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Yeah, I think my biggest concern on a project like this would be with the traffic impacts. I think you've addressed that. Same thing with the public outreach. It's critical. We talked about that before when we were talking about the Alcosta paving project and everything and several other projects, but public outreach is critical here. And it sounds like you got that covered too. So thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Mixel or one of the other broadcasts, the text broadcast might be more effective in this case, just for people to know, because yeah, people will see that and then hopefully, Google somewhere will add that there's a construction zone and people will find out about it in a few days. So how long is this going to take approximately?
It's approximately 1.5 years.
Okay, so 1.5 years of a single lane?
No, we actually hope that there will be and will require that there be more than one lane open in each direction whenever possible. So the contractor will have extensive periods where it's down to one lane. But if they're not actively doing construction, we're requiring that they open that lane back up.
Yeah. So the other thing is, could people, before choosing to take Bollinger or Crow Canyon, have a detour sign which says construction zone? So
yes. So we anticipate that the contractor will be placing changeable message board signs at various locations, which will change with the phasing of the project. However, we've also procured 2 changeable message boards, which we anticipate will be putting at either end of the project well before we get to that last turnoff point to redirect traffic away from the project.
Yeah, for example, if somebody's coming from Bollinger and choosing to go to Costco through Crow Canyon, maybe where they should go through Bollinger, kind of,
Yeah, and we anticipate that we could have one at somewhere in around the intersection of Doherty and Crow to get people off of Crow, and another one in the other direction before you get to Al Costa to get people to turn down Al Costa.
Great.
Sridhar, you had another one?
Yes, based on our experience with Tasahara Road and Dorothy Valley Road repairs happening at the same time, people had a lot of inconvenience, a lot of challenges, right? So I just want to make sure that we are aware of any roads that are getting repaired or getting done during that period. So let's make sure we take that into consideration for this plan.
Yes, that is a very good comment, and we are aware of that because we, in fact, are planning other projects of our own. We will be continuing to do the pavement management projects, and so that will add another layer of inconvenience and difficulty to residents. So we are taking that into account, particularly as we move forward with the final steps in design of next year's pavement management.
Sounds good. And do we communicate this with the Danville residents also?
Yes, Danville has been, both the town of Danville staff has been involved with this project, including review of the plans. And we've been in constant communication with the town. And that mailing radius will include residents in Danville. And with Danville's permission through encroachment permits, I anticipate signage on Danville streets.
Excellent. Thanks, Robin.
Okay, council members Zafar, we're going after second and third rounds here, Mark. You better start working on your question. Go ahead, Sabina.
Starting to come up with questions. So will this in any way overlap with the overpass construction as well?
Yes, it will. That impact will hopefully be fairly modest. The main impacts to traffic from that project will come with the installation of the foundation elements in the center median and with the erection of the bridge itself. And so there will be impacts, but those impacts will be relatively short and intense with the bridge and likely night work. And so it shouldn't be too bad with regard to this.
Yeah. Hopefully San Ramon is not closed for business.
No.
Not a chance. Okay, before we open up public comment, I two questions that I would have. One, just as a courtesy, can we send something to the Blackhawk Homeowners Association or somebody out there? We were doing it when we were doing stuff with LPGA, just to let them know that the road they use the most is going to have some courtesy. The other thing, 20% above the estimate, Robin. Is this going to be a sign of the times? I mean, I know that lumber went up. Are we going to be expecting this from now on out?
Well, I hope not. I mean, there are indications that there are certain elements to this project that may be COVID impacted. Certain particularly manufactured elements seem to be more expensive than expected. Of course, this is also a pretty complicated project. It has a lot of phasing, a lot of different elements, a busy road. And so those things can make a project like this subject to a lot of variability.
Yeah. Well, it can't be that far off if everybody else came in higher.
Yeah.
So it's 20 or more, but okay. So, Councilmember Savari, you have another question.
Yeah, your question triggered my question. So I know we were doing this project management thing with the overpass to control the costs, which had been passed by the assembly. Are we doing something similar, or does that only apply to a specific kind of project?
That can be applied to a variety of projects. It's normally done to projects that are extremely complicated or unique. This wouldn't normally be subject to that kind of thing. The bridge is a good example for that because it is a very much a specialized construction element, and you are seeking to get the contractor involvement early on in order to minimize the potential for change. So this is, while there's certainly things that we seek contractor input on this, it's relatively conventional in of itself. And so this was done through normal design and then bid and build process.
Is there a certain criteria that's applied to more complicated projects and lets us control costs, or?
I don't know that there's a specific criteria. To me, it's whether there's particularly unique elements. If it's something that's been designed and built many times before, then that is something that conventional design, bid, and build practice would be most appropriate for. With the bridge, so the pedestrian bridge is very unique. If it were a concrete box girder bridge, that would be something that you would just design using a conventional method. There could be other unique elements, such as something particularly difficult about a location or timing or things like that, that might push you towards using those other methods like design build or the CMGC approach.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, we've questioned out for now. Let's open up the public comment. If you wish to speak under public comment on this item, please raise your hand or dial *9 on your telephone. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and a clock will be running on the Zoom screen. We have 2 attendees that wish to speak. Let's start with call-in user number 1 and then Subak.
Hi, councils. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I would highly recommend that you break down this project for a couple of reasons. Number one, the bid differences is a whopping $3 million. I really suspect that these contractors are not able to accurately project their cost due to the pandemic, their labor shortage, and also now we're entering into a World War III ready circumstance. So let's imagine we approve of this project halfway through, and this project is, if I read it correctly, not going to finish until next year during summertime. During this time, a whole year to year and a half, a lot of things can happen. So if something does happen where material shortage or that there is a war, now you're committed to this many millions of dollars, it is highly unwise. Is it possible to ask the staff to break it further down into 3 sections and then build little sections and different sections with a shorter amount of time for the project? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Subak.
Hi again.
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to Robin, who has put forth this project or the presentation, and for you council members in making it happen. The bike lane that you have created as part of the project, I think is excellent. It would be called a level 4 bike lane, correct?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Rob.
this does not actually meet the level 4 standard.
Okay. So anyway, I was looking at the bike plan for San Ramon, and I know it's been a project for quite some time. And I'm hoping that we can have more level 4 bike lanes for the city, because I've been riding my bike around San Ramon and I don't do it anymore in many neighborhoods because I've almost been hit several times from behind from cars racing on Norris Canyon. And then also, just an aside, a few years ago, my husband was actually hit in a pedestrian crosswalk on Norris Canyon at Twin Creeks. And he was very lucky to survive. So with that being said, there's an issue with Norris Canyon being small, and riding a bike on that really isn't very safe. There's cars parked there all the time. So with the bike plan that I've seen, I think it's a level 1. The same with Twin Creeks. There's no way to have a bike path in either way from that direction. Like I said, I live in the neighborhood, so I do like to ride my bike. The only place to ride is on the sidewalk. So I'd ask you just to take a look at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. I want to bring this back. That the last points had me a little confused. We are dealing with Crow Canyon tonight, and the project, which is resolution 2022-28. So we will, first of all, are there any written comments, Christina?
You did receive one written comment from Stephen Dunbar for this item.
Okay, and we've all received that. Then we will close the public comment. The matter for discussion is before the city council. We're being asked to approve 2022-28. The question about splitting this up, Robin, I tell you what, that would be absolutely contrary for what I just fought to do with Summerhill. They're going to split that one up with East Bay. I don't see how it makes economic sense if we're increasing it 20% to split it up. Am I missing something? Well, I don't know anyway after it's been bid out. But
in a certain sense, this is split up in that this is phase 1 of the Crow Canyon widening project, which, according to the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement, would extend all the way to Doherty Road. Mm-hmm. So there's certainly a lot of different elements to this, but they all need to be taken into account and done. In order to do one, you have to do the other. So you could try and shorten it, but really what you'd start to do is introduce a lot of inefficiencies, because you'd have to be doing a lot of the same work over and over again as you came in multiple different times to execute the project, and your total cost would go up if you tried to do it as multiple projects.
Yeah, I was watching what was going on at Al Costa, and I'm going, wow, how they pulled that off. I was impressed. And I hope they can do the same thing on Crow, but let's ask for other questions. We have council members so far.
Yeah, so Robin, just to get an understanding on the bike lane, right now this is a temporary one, but as part of this project, my understanding was that our bike plan will align with any updates or anything we do. What would the bike lane be at the end of the project?
So this project incorporates new bike lanes, which are a buffered bike lane with a 2-foot buffer and a 6-foot lane. So there's a total of an 8-foot width, which is a substantial improvement over what is there now. The project does not incorporate a class 4 bike lane, which would have some kind of a physical separation or grade separation from the traffic. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that this is really a project that is aimed at satisfying the conditions of the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement. So it's really about traffic improvement and incidental items associated with the widening itself, and any other elements beyond that would need to be funded separately. However, this project does not preclude doing other improvements for a class 4 bike lane. So it basically lays some of the groundwork that would allow that to be done. But before doing that, it would involve some additional study to make sure that it's being done appropriately and safely, additional design, consideration for how it would even be maintained, and things of that nature. So it's not necessarily in conflict with putting in a class 4 bike lane. That is something that could be considered in the future.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea, because that settlement happened years ago, and things have changed in the process, and it is, I would imagine, right, it's part of your traffic mitigation, traffic management, that bikes are, it's just gone up, right? Bike traffic has gone up significantly, and that might be a good reason to say if we can tap into these funds for some of our upgrades to the bike lanes as well. So if you can explore that, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I think the toughest thing you're gonna have, Robin, is it's not our settlement. We're just signed on to it. I mean, I keep going back to this, and I hate to be the little jerk to remind everybody, but there was a beautiful plan that San Ramon had for Doherty Valley right before well, it was taken away from us, and I think that we would have focused on that, but it's still the county's plan, and the settlement agreement has been set. And if they want to pay extra money on it, I'd love to get it, but at least put it on the Danville side. They can do it for now. Now, we're going to have to start doing this stuff in a major way for bikes. It's coming, and it's coming fast. And that's why when I look at this City Walk program, and when we went through it, Sabina, I keep thinking, you know, is this something that we'd hit it with as a condition of approval? I don't know, but I can tell you bikes are going to make well, they are making a resurgence. That's why I push for 16 feet. But that's not what we're looking at tonight. It's what do we call it? A 2022, 28, too many 20s in this tonight. Mark, go ahead.
So I'd like to move that council approves resolution 2022-28 as written.
Okay.
A second.
We have a motion, Armstrong, second, Burrows. Any further discussion? Sabina, your hand looks like your left hand is going up, and but it's not like you're pushing. It's just something moving over there.
I think it's the light
Okay.
in my background.
Okay, no further discussion. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Zafar,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Veros,
Yes.
Mayor Hudson.
Yes, that's 4-0. Moving on to 10.2, this is a public hearing for ordinance next line, repealing and replacing section A322, that's districts, of the San Ramon Municipal Code. We're being asked to introduce the ordinance, waive the reading, open a public hearing. We have a staff report from City Attorney Martin License.
Thank you again, and good evening, Mayor Hudson and council. We are now in the home stretch of our redistricting process, and as you know, we're 3 meetings into the process, and we have 1 meeting left to meet the state requirement of 4. Of course, the council can add more meetings at its discretion, but the entire process has to be done by the state deadline of April 17th. So the ordinance before you tonight is intended to take some of the pressure, some of the time pressure off of the council, and ensure that all this gets done by deadline. Currently, the Muni Code requires that redistricting be done by ordinance. And as you know, that would require 2 separate hearings in order to approve the new district map. 1 hearing for the introduction and 1 hearing for the adoption. And that also means that we would have to wait 30 days after adoption before the ordinance and the new district map that goes with it can go into effect. So the proposed ordinance allows the council to approve the new maps by resolution instead of by ordinance. State law allows for that. So the current ordinance just adds, so the ordinance that we have in place now basically just adds to the number of steps that it takes to get the redistricting done. So the process under the new ordinance would still be transparent. It would just be shorter. Adoption of the resolution would need to be done after a hearing and an agendized meeting of the council, and the new maps would take effect immediately after the ordinance has taken effect and the council's resolution is adopted. So right now, the redistricting schedule looks like this. Tonight, we would introduce the ordinance to allow adoption by resolution. On March the 8th, we would adopt the ordinance. On March 22nd, we will be holding the 4th scheduled hearing. And at that time, either adopt a resolution, but that resolution would have to have an effective date of April the 8th, because April the 7th would be the date that this proposed ordinance would take effect. The other option would be to continue the 4th hearing on March 22nd to a date after April 8th and before April 17th. It's not quite as complicated as I'm making it sound, but there is an April 12th regularly scheduled meeting where we could hold a 5th meeting for redistricting if we had to. And then, of course, the April 17th state deadline would be to adopt the new district boundaries. So tonight, I'm just asking for step one, which is introducing the ordinance, waive the reading, open the public hearing, receive public testimony, close the public hearing, and set March 8th, 2022 as for ordinance adoption. And I'll take any questions you may have.
I'm embarrassed to say I understood that. Are there any questions before I make the motion to open a public hearing? I don't see any. Let's keep this thing moving. I'll move to introduce the ordinance next in line, repealing and replacing section A3-22, that's districts of the San Ramon Municipal Code, and waive the reading, open and conduct the public hearing. Do I have a second?
I can second.
You're not quick enough, Sridhar. We have a second from Council Member Zafar. Any further discussion? Mark, you're unmuted. Nope, no further discussion. Okay, let's take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Zafar,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Veros,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes. Okay, then we have an open public hearing. Let's open up open up for public comment. Once again, if you wish to speak under public comment on this item, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone. When it's your turn to speak, we'll call upon you by name. You'll have 3 minutes. I'm stalling as I see one attendee wants to speak. So I'll make it 3 minutes and call in user 1. You're first.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I oppose. I don't trust Mr. License from the past dealings with his department. His department is very stealthy and is not transparent at all. From my appeal for the Sandbox VR, they have been giving me misinformation, disinformation. I feel that this resolution is to minimize transparency that you have to give to the public. By approving something by resolution, it is literally that you don't even have to open up to the public. Whatever we say is garbage to you because you already have the resolution to pass. I completely oppose. This is about democracy. I have the right to vote for everyone, but you guys decide to take away my vote to be able to vote for all of the councils. And now 3 of you don't really have to care about what I say because I cannot vote for you. And now the attorney whose department is full of Asian from communist China, and I really oppose this kind of communist government that we are feeding and imposing to American Democratic City of San Ramon. This is equivalent to a sin for democracy, and I oppose.
We don't have any other speakers that wish to speak. Were there any written comments?
There are no written comments for this item.
Seeing none, we will close the public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make a motion to close the public hearing by motion?
I can move.
Motion Zafar. I'm looking at unmuted. This is a tie here.
Second.
Okay, Armstrong comes in with the left hand, or was that the right? And I've got it mixed up. Okay, we have a motion Zafar, second Armstrong. Any further discussion? I have one. We are doing districts not because of our attorney or his staff. It's because state law pretty much says you're going to start doing districts. And we'll leave it at that. Any further discussion? See, I keep looking at yours, Martin, because you're unmuted, or you just have your unmute on because once I get going, you know to get it unmuted.
Hey, my item, I got to be ready.
Okay, seeing none. Mark, did you have something to add? You just want to unmute it.
No, I mean, I will add that I do believe we have a fairly open and transparent public hearing on the redistricting process. We've been going through multiple meetings already. We have more to go. This will streamline the approval process. I don't see that it takes away any transparency or ability for the public to participate in this process.
Yeah, and I've had a dozen, we have had a dozen written. It's just a matter of trying to get it in there and make them all work. And we're not through yet. I mean, we left a couple things open, but that's for the next meeting. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Zafar,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Veros,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion before we make the motion to set the ordinance for adoption at the next city council meeting on March 8th? Seeing none, I just made a motion to set the adoption at the next city council meeting on March 8th. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, second, Zafar, any further discussion on this? I'm not looking at hands. It looks like everybody's on board. We're moving right along. Do we need a roll call vote on that also?
Yes, thank you.
You thought I was going to try and slip it in, didn't you? It's not
Councilmember
passed.
Armstrong,
Yes.
Councilmember Zafar,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Barros,
Yes.
and Mayor Hudson.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's another 4-0. Let's move on to 10.3. It's the San Ramon Police Department Annual Report. And we are going to hear from Chief Craig Stevens, and I'll bet you didn't think you were going to be doing it this early, did you? Where is he?
I probably should ask if anyone needs a bathroom break before I get started. I've been told this presentation goes on a little long, but I'll do my best. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. It's again my privilege to present the police department's annual report. And just as a reminder to last year's presentation, I was pleased to report that in 2020, we actually experienced the lowest crime rate in the history of our city, and that was going all the way back to 1983. Of course, the pandemic, I think, had a lot to do with that. We were kind of in shutdown mode for a significant amount of months during 2020. But with that being said, I'm pleased to report, and I'll show you the data here shortly, that although we have seen some increases in crime for 2021, the rates continue to be extremely low, and San Ramon continues to be a very safe community. I'm going to share my screen here so I can pull up a PowerPoint presentation. Okay, everybody can see that? Okay. Before I get started, so you see a list of crimes here, and just to lay some groundwork, the 8 crimes that you see listed here are Part 1 crimes that are defined in the Uniform Crime Reporting System, which is defined by the FBI. And every police department in the country reports these 8 crimes to the FBI on an annual basis. So every police department, these are the 8 Part 1 crimes that we all look at and track on an annual basis. And the slide that you see here shows San Ramon's Part 1 crimes for the last 5 years. The very bottom line is the total number of offenses that we've had for each calendar year. And again, I'll point out in 2020, when you factor in population, 2020 was actually our lowest per capita crime rate in the history of our city. So even though in 2018, we actually had 8 less crimes, when you factor in population, 2020 was our lowest crime rate. So you do see in 2021, we did have an increase. We went from 852 Part 1 crimes up to 935. However, when you look at 2019, which was our last year pre-pandemic, you'll see that our numbers are still trailing far behind what they were in 2019. In looking at the 2021 data, I've highlighted 2 categories, and the reason I've highlighted the larceny and the motor vehicle theft is because predominantly those are the 2 crimes that we've seen an increase in 2021 that has led to that increase, from 850 to 930. And I also want to say that these crimes, they're not specific to us, and I'll show you some other crime data from some of our partnering cities. And you'll see that these 2 crimes are really impacting everybody. I think everyone is well aware of a lot of the issues that we're having with retail theft across the state, and motor vehicle theft obviously is an issue as well. One thing I do want to point out, in the burglary category, you see a number in parentheses. And what that number signifies is how many of those burglaries were residential burglaries. In 2020, we had seen a pretty significant decrease in residential burglaries, and our thought process was, well, we've seen a decrease because people are working from home, people aren't at work. And fortunately, we've seen that trend continue. And in 2021, we only had 36 reported residential burglaries, which is the lowest number that we've had in the last 5 years. And obviously, residential burglaries are extremely traumatic for victims. So very pleased to report that in 2021, we only had 36 of those cases. With that being said, I know that there's a lot of our neighboring cities that are really having a lot of issues with the residential burglaries right now, and trying to identify some organized crime rings that really seem to be targeting a lot of people. So fortunately, we have not been significantly impacted in San Ramon, but we will continue to watch that trend.
Chief Stevens, one quick question for
Yes.
the previous slide. So just for my understanding, what are non-residential burglary?
That could be a burglary of a business. It could be of a storage unit, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
So some other type of structure other than a home. So those would be, the most common. Other types would be of a business or a storage unit, things like that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So this just continues with some of the part one crime data, and you can see when you break it down of crimes per 1,000 residents in 2021, you'll see that our number was 11.15, and looking at the previous 10 years, you can see that number is very much in line, maybe even a little below average over what our crime rate has been over the last 10 years. And in the narrative up above, you'll see, the property crime, which again, pretty much takes into consideration the vehicle thefts and the larcenies, that we did see an increase of about 11% in our property crime. However, our violent crime was actually down slightly. We had 51 reported violent crimes in 2021 compared to 54 in 2020. So obviously great to report that we actually had a slight reduction in violent crime, even though our numbers in 2020 were extraordinarily low. This is a comparison that shows our part one crimes as it relates to some of our neighboring partners. The reason that we've chose these cities is due to proximity and relative similarity in population sizes. And again, there's a lot of data there, but I think the main things I want to point out is that of these 4 cities, San Ramon has the largest population. With that being said, if you look at the bottom number of total part one offenses, even though we're the largest city, pretty significantly, we had the lowest amount of part one crimes in 2021. And that's not to say that these other cities that are listed are high crime areas. They're not. They're all considered safe cities. Walnut Creek does have the challenge of a very robust downtown, which I'm sure contributes to some of their issues. But I think it's significant, again, to note that we're the largest city, but we do have the lowest amount of part one crimes. And again, just to point out those 2 categories that really impacted us the most, theft and motor vehicle thefts. You can look at our numbers compared to these neighboring jurisdictions. And even though we saw a pretty significant impact and that made the biggest difference in our numbers really kind of pale in comparison compared to our neighboring cities.
So all 4 of these cities have our own police department, Chief?
They all do, except for the city of Dublin. The city of Dublin actually contracts with the sheriff's office. And up until last year, I had never included Dublin in our comparison. And the main issue is just because there's too much of a population disparity. But as you know, with Dublin's growth in recent years, that disparity is not as big as it used to. And in fact, they've actually surpassed Walnut Creek's population. And obviously the fact that we share a border, I think that it is a good comparison to see where they're at in comparison with us. But Pleasanton and Walnut Creek are like us. They're their own police departments. In Dublin, they contract with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. And each of you know this, but if there's something that you want some clarification on, please let me know and I'll explain anything as we're going along. This is a snapshot that shows kind of what our officers are doing. And you can see I've got the data going all the way back to 2014. You'll see that in 2021, our calls for service were actually down slightly from 2020, which was a little surprising to me. With that being said, our arrests were up. We had made 500 arrests in 2020. That number increased up to 574 in 2021. Our reports went up. We wrote over 3,300 reports. The online reporting system, you see, we only had 65, and I just need to report that we're going to be switching vendors, and we're looking at a different vendor to switch over for our online reporting. So my hope is in the next several months that transition will take place, and I think moving forward we'll start seeing increases in some of the online reporting of crimes that we determine fall into that category where they can be reported online versus in person. And then lastly, although we've seen a reduction, we still responded to over 2,000 alarm calls last year. And hopefully with the passing of our new ordinance, we will continue to see that number decline moving forward. I want to talk briefly on traffic enforcement. In 2020, we had a significant decline in the amount of traffic stops that we did. And there was really two parts of that. One was we didn't have the normal traffic patterns that we were used to seeing. In fact, at certain times, traffic was almost non-existent. And then the other part was at my directive, because for a number of months in 2020, I was really focused on trying to keep my staff safe and trying to minimize the exposure that our officers had. So we were not doing traffic enforcement in the ways that we had in the past. We are starting to transition back to what we would consider our normal levels of traffic enforcement. You do see a slight increase in the amount of traffic stops we had in 2021. As we move forward into 2022, you can expect that number will continue to increase, just as our traffic patterns have returned to very close what they were pre-pandemic. And as a result, our traffic enforcement will continue to increase with that. And the ironic thing about last year is, we didn't do as many car stops as we normally do. But if you look at this slide on the crashes by year, in 2020, we had the lowest amount of crashes we've had in a year that I can remember, which generally, if we're not doing as much traffic enforcement, you would assume there's going to be more traffic collisions. But again, we all know that in 2020, we just did not have the traffic that we're used to having in our community. With that being said, in 2021, you can see that our accidents have gone up. They're not quite to where they were in 2019, our first year prior to, or last year prior to the pandemic, but we did see an increase in crashes for 2021. Our DUI arrests are down, but so are our DUI crashes. And I also need to point out that our traffic unit, they were not at full staff for a fairly significant portion of the last calendar year. But I am anticipating next month that our traffic unit will be up to full staffing. So that should be happening here fairly quickly. This was a slide I think I included in last year's presentation for the first time. And there's a lot of numbers here, but there's just really a couple that I want to point out. And essentially is that 99.7% of calls, almost every call that comes into our dispatch center is answered within 15 seconds. And over 98% of those calls are answered within 10 seconds. And these numbers are amazing. And there are very few dispatch centers that can show these type of numbers. And I know all of us, we've experienced some sort of emergency at some point in our lives, whether it be being a victim of a crime or having a medical emergency. But when you're the one that's making that call, seconds matter. And to be able to get someone on the line within 5, 10, 15 seconds and start reporting what's going on, that's important. And I know that our community, they may not know any different, which is a good thing, but I guarantee there's a lot of other communities that they can't say this. And it's sad to say, but I think there's some dispatch centers where you literally could be on hold for a minute or longer. You could be placed on hold even during an emergency. And that's just not the case in our community. If you call our dispatch center, almost 100% of the time, you're going to be talking to a dispatcher within 15 seconds. And you see they took in over 20,000 calls for the 2021 calendar year. So they're just doing a fantastic job. The other component to this is what is our response time? What is the police department's response time after we get the call from dispatch? And again, in 2020, we had our lowest reported response time since we started tracking this. Again, I think a lot of that had to do with traffic patterns, that while responding to certain type of calls, our officers weren't having to deal with traffic like they normally would. So 2020, our response times were phenomenal. And 5 minutes is really kind of the industry standard on priority one type calls. And you see there's 3 different priorities listed, and how they're defined is listed below. But priority ones, those are emergencies. Those are calls where there is an urgent need for police to be there. And again, 5 minutes, if you're 5 minutes or better, you're doing phenomenal. And again, you know, we were at 4 minutes and 21 seconds on our priority ones. And really, if you look at the priority ones, priority twos, and priority threes, they're actually very similar to what they were in 2020. Again, which was the lowest response times we'd ever had. And I think when you factor in, again, the normal traffic patterns and traffic that our officers are dealing with, these numbers are excellent. I look at these numbers on a monthly basis. It's something I track very closely. It helps me determine our staffing levels if they're appropriate. I look at each individual beat and what responses are in particular beats to make sure that we're serving all parts of our community the way that we should. And again, these numbers are fantastic. So when you call dispatch and you're talking to a dispatcher within a matter of seconds, and when we get dispatched and we're there under 5 minutes, our community should know that if they are experiencing an emergency, that we're going to get there very quickly. And ultimately, that's very important, because as I said, when you're experiencing an emergency, seconds do count. Last year, I had mentioned this for the first time, and in all full disclosure, I'm just kind of putting this slide in as a foundational slide to a presentation that we're going to be doing at the next council meeting on March 8th, in which we're going to be doing a joint presentation with Chief Meyer and the fire district. But I just want to bring this to the council's attention that in 2021, we had 152, what we call 5150 holds. These are, calls where someone is being placed on a mental health commitment. Most of the time it's because they are suicidal or they are expressing some sort of intent of self-harm. And of those cases, 62 were juveniles. So, you know, this is a issue that is certainly present in our community. And excited to present kind of what we plan, or what we're going to try to do to address what we see as a significant issue, and a way to hopefully offer a better service to members of our community that are suffering a mental health crisis. So again, we will be doing a joint presentation on the March 8th meeting to kind of let you know what our strategy will be and kind of describe that pilot program. I know all of you have a pretty good idea what it's about, but we will be giving a further presentation on that at the next meeting.
So Chief, is it increased from previous years, or that's juveniles, or is it decreasing?
Well, we saw a significant increase last year. And again, not surprising. We know that in 2020, just with what was going on with COVID, I think a lot of people, their careers were being impacted, kids not being in school. So we had seen a pretty significant increase in 2020. Our numbers in 2021 have gone up slightly, but they're pretty consistent. But our numbers for the last 2 years are definitely trending higher than they had been prior to 2020.
And nowhere to go, no Halloween, it was not a fun year.
Yeah, and it will put a lot of stress on your department also, right, as it increases. So
it does, and it impacts, you know, the fire district. But, you know, I've been doing this job for a long time, and while, you know, 5150s have been part of you know, what law enforcement has done my entire career, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I don't remember as many kids falling into this category that are happening now. So again, we're looking at a way to address it at a regional level. I know all of you are aware of the A3 plan that the county is looking at as well, to provide really countywide assistance for those who are in mental health crisis. So I think it's fantastic that we're really kind of looking at an issue that probably has not garnered the amount of attention that it should, but it's getting that attention now. And I think by the end of this year, at a local level and at a county-wide level, I think we're going to have some really good programs in place to be able to assist people that are suffering some level of a mental health crisis.
So I've heard quite a bit about suicide ideation and that rising. Is there anything proactively we can do to at least prevent, somebody ideating is one thing, but somebody actually doing something about it? Or is it all right now kind of reactive?
Well, I think that's an issue we're looking at a local level and at a countywide level. And I think, the challenge is that, we as law enforcement, we're pretty limited. And by the way, I think we do a really good job in handling these type of calls. We do get training, and I think we've kind of got an unfair shake as far as the way we respond to these. But there's no doubt that we are limited in what we could do. We're not counselors, we're not clinicians. And I think really that's what our program is going to look at, as well as the county program, is some other level of assistance or intervention that doesn't require just being placed on a 5150 hold. Of the people that are placed on a 5150 hold, how many truly have some sort of desire or intent to self-harm? I don't know. But I think the idea is that there's going to be other resources that are available. I think the hope is that we will see this number decline. I am hopeful that we're going to see the actual number of suicides decline. And I'm confident that will happen, because that's really what everyone is focusing on, is trying to reach out and offer assistance before it's too late. And we know as police that we're not always the best answer, and we fully acknowledge that. We know that there are times we're going to have to intervene and get involved, but if someone is suffering, a mental health crisis, having police officers showing up in uniform with all their equipment on, that potentially could escalate a situation just by their presence, even if the cops are doing everything right. So we're really trying to look at this from all different angles. And again, I look forward to giving our presentation at the next meeting so we can really further define what our local program is going to look like, and certainly can answer any questions that you have about that program, because we'll have members of the fire district here as well. We can talk about the training that we're giving to all of our fire staff and police staff. So I think you'll find that pretty informative.
Yeah, but Chief, is it worse to have somebody show up in uniform than no one show up?
Well, no, there will be somebody showing.
No, but I
up.
mean,
I
if
don't want to give away. I don't want to give away all the.
Who is going out there is the problem. If nobody goes out there, it can't be better than at least someone showing up.
I don't want to give away all the material, because Chief Meyer won't have anything to talk about at the next meeting. So.
Get him a donut.
So there will be a response. It's not always going to be the police that are responding to some of these calls. And again, we'll kind of give a further explanation on how that's going to work at the next council meeting.
So I know Dublin had passed something where they were passing out locks for guns if people had them. Do we do something like that to encourage people to keep their guns and weapons under lock and key? Or
we have done that in the past. We have given out gun locks in the past, and it's certainly something that we could look into again. I think it's been several years since we have done that, but I know several years ago we did that. We're giving out gun locks to members of the community that requested them.
Yeah, I think it would be great to bring something like that back, just because as you're hearing about, suicide ideation, and part of it is if there is a weapon in easy reach of a juvenile, for example, or anybody ideating that. So would love to see what we can do around being more proactive. So it's not even in their reach or something like that.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly look into getting that program up again.
Continue.
Thank you.
I'm going to transition into staffing a little bit. And this staff just shows, we became our own police department, as all of you know, back in 2007. It shows what the population of San Ramon was back then, what our staffing looked like, and then where we're at today. And what you can see that on average, we've added about 1 officer per year just to maintain what we feel are appropriate staffing levels to keep up with the population growth. One thing I do want to point out is you see that our professional staff actually shows a reduction of 1, which may not make a whole lot of sense, but I can explain that. When we started in 2007, we were contracting with the sheriff's office for our dispatch services. When we're doing that, we had to have record staff that worked around the clock. When we started contracting with the fire district for dispatch services, dispatch staff had the ability to handle many of the off-hour record functions. So we're able to reduce our record staff, and we no longer had that need for around-the-clock coverage. So if you had a question why our professional staff has actually went down by 1, it's because we had the ability to reduce our record staff to just working business hours as opposed to around the clock.
While you're taking a drink, I'd point out that 58,000 in population, when we did the 2010 census, went to 70,000. We were way under.
Yeah. So to continue with some of our staffing challenges. So in 2021, we hired 10 new officers. And if you recall, last year, I reported that we had hired 11 officers in 2020. So for a department our size to hire 21 officers in a 2-year period is significant. And I'm anticipating that in 2022, we've already started doing some hiring, and I'm anticipating that we're probably going to hire in the double digits again in 2022. And I think we're going to be in this pattern for probably maybe another 1.5 years. And then I think our retirements are going to start slowing down. But we have been doing a lot of hiring. We're bringing on fantastic candidates. We are really fortunate that we get a lot of lateral candidates that literally they're not applying anywhere else. It's, they're police officers in other jurisdictions, and they apply with us, and this is the only place that they're interested in coming. And we're getting excellent candidates, and speaking with a lot of my colleagues in other departments throughout the county, I think they're not in the same situation we're in. So I think it just kind of speaks to the type of city we have, the type of department we have, the type of support we have. And we feel very fortunate at the level of candidates that we continue to get. As the city grows, we're anticipating that our calls for service will increase, and we're always looking at crime trends that are impacting our city and our residents, and attempting to transition and address those issues as they happen.
So one thing is for sure, as the population keeps growing and the crime trends obviously looks like it's going to grow, right? So and also staffing challenges you'll continue to have, I'm sure. So are we exploring any alternate solutions like technology solutions that can help us?
We are, and I don't want to jump ahead because I actually want to tell you about a new staff member that we've had join our team recently.
Good.
That, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, but to tell you about one of our staff members that we added a few months ago, and tell you about some of the work that he's doing, that it certainly, I think, is going to make our folks more efficient, and really take full advantage of the technology we have. And I can talk about some of the softwares that we're looking to keep improving our level of service to our community. So I will touch on that here shortly.
It's like a RoboCop.
Well, not quite that far. Not quite that far.
Hey, Chief, quick question here. I assume that somebody on the staff, whether it's you or somebody, is doing some kind of an exit interview on those who are retiring or those who are leaving the department. What can you summarize as maybe the top reasons for people departing the department?
Well, most of our vacancies are due to retirements, and most of those people, they have just gotten to a certain age or a certain amount of tenure where I think it's just their time to go. They've hit that, they're 50 plus years old. They've hit the 20 plus years of service. We have had a number of officers that have decided to leave law enforcement altogether and move out of state. There's not been a lot, but we have had a handful of those. And I have interviews with all of them when they leave. And probably the most common things I hear is that either they've decided that law enforcement is not something that they want to do anymore, or this is not the community, not San Ramon. When I say California is not where they want to raise their families. There's no secret that, and I think we're coming out of it, and we have come out of it to a certain extent. But I don't think there's any questioning that in 2020 and 2021, it was a really challenging time for our profession. And I think that not just in our department, I think law enforcement in general has seen a pretty massive exodus. And it's pretty concerning because there's probably no more important time to be bringing good people on than right now. And I do think that I think there some of the support that seemed to have left law enforcement seems to be coming back. My hope is that we will continue to be able to attract young people into this profession that are doing it for the right reasons, because again, I don't think there's any more important time than that needs to happen than right now. But as far as our people that have left that were not of a retirement age, those are kind of the two main issues that have been brought up to me, is either they just don't want to do this job anymore, or they've decided that they want to relocate to a different state.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. I mean, because it's so important that we invest a lot into the training of our officers, and it's quite a commitment that we have, and retention is really important. But some of the factors are sort of beyond our control. I understand that, but retention is certainly a critical piece of this for maintaining our staff levels. So thank you.
Yeah, and most of our vacancies are due to retirements. And we kind of knew this was coming. As I mentioned, we started our own PD in 2007. And when we started in 2007, kind of our average years of tenure was about 12 or 13 years. Well, when you fast forward another 14, 15 years, all those officers that had, 12 to 13 are now in that 25 to 30. So we just have a lot of retirements that are kind of happening all at one time, but we're keeping up with it.
Great. Thank you.
So I don't know, Chief, if there's something like this in law enforcement. I know corporate America is looking at returnships, which is women that had taken a break during, to raise kids are now coming back to the workforce. It might be a different way of thinking about bringing people into staffing and law enforcement, but I think it's really there. And I don't know if that's something that people in law enforcement are looking at or not, but I'm certainly seeing that in corporate America, where we are seeing that trend of returnships.
Yeah, and I think it's something to explore, but there are certain post certifications that that need to stay valid. And if someone is away from law enforcement for an extended period of time, potentially their certifications could expire. But I do think that is an area that's certainly worth exploring. So just to continue with our current staffing, ever since the city center opened, we've followed that pretty closely to see how that's impacted calls for service. And I'm pleased to report, for the most part, city center has not been overly burdensome to the police department. I will say that in December, around Christmas, all of you are aware of all the smash and grab incidents and thefts that were occurring really throughout the Bay Area. We did increase staffing specifically at the city center just to offer a level of deterrent and response. Unfortunately, we didn't have any incidents like that at the city center, but it's not really created any undue workload on the officer that's assigned to that particular area. We continue to try to staff our 6th beat as often as staffing allows. And one of the primary reasons for that is simply for response times. As I mentioned, I look at those numbers on a monthly basis. And if we have, six different beats with an officer assigned to each one of those beats versus 5 officers assigned to 5 bigger beats, obviously we're going to have better response times. So we're trying to keep that 6th beat staffed as frequently as we can. And as I mentioned, we are seeing traffic patterns that are returning more to what we were used to pre-pandemic. So we are adjusting our response accordingly. I want to touch briefly on our crime prevention and community relations unit. They really play an integral role in our department. They do a lot of our public outreach efforts. They're the unit that heads up our social media platforms. They coordinate and run our Citizens Police Academy, which I know Councilmember Armstrong is a recent graduate. So they really do a lot of fantastic work. They work with our homeowners associations, businesses. They coordinate our Neighborhood Watch program, our Citizens View program, which if our residents don't know, if they have some sort of home surveillance system, they can register that camera system with us. And they're not giving us access to their system, but it just lets us know that they have a camera. And if we have a crime that occurs in that neighborhood, we can look at our registry. And if, let's say, we had an auto burglary, if we know that the house across the street had a camera, we could go contact them, ask them to look at their footage and see if they were able to capture anything, suspect description, suspect vehicle that would help us in identifying who the suspects are. So we do have that program that's available, and our residents can register for that on our website. I want to touch briefly on our current fiscal year. So in the current fiscal year, we're able to add a MET officer, and that's a mental health evaluation team officer. And that officer is assigned to Central and South County. And really what his role is he is teamed up with a clinician from the county health department, and they work pretty much on referrals. So in other words, if we've had some sort of contact with someone who's experienced a mental health crisis, that we have some concern that they may have some sort of violent tendency, if we think they are at an extremely high risk, if they have been if they've been committed on a 5150 commitment numerous times, we can actually make a referral to our MET officer, and our MET officer and the clinician will actually go out and try to do an intervention or a contact with that person to see, excuse me, if there's any resources that are available to hopefully give that person the assistance that they need so that the situation doesn't continue escalating. So we have been doing that we've had that officer on MET for about 7 or 8 months now. It's a great resource to us because if we have those in our own community that are suffering from, some sort of mental health crisis that we think would warrant a referral to our MET officer, we have that ability. So it's been fantastic to be able to get one of our officers involved on that team. And then Vice Mayor, this is the position I wanted to talk to you about. It's our Crime Intelligence Coordinator. And this is a position that it's not a new position. We actually did a little bit of a reorganization in the department, and we added a crime analyst, and he's been with us for a few months now and is already doing some amazing work. He is working on looking at our crime data to identify crime trends, to hopefully be able to predict future crime. He is exploring different softwares that we can utilize that will help in assisting in doing those things I just talked about, predicting crime, looking at crime patterns. He's very involved in our camera program, which I haven't talked about that, because I know we just did a presentation to council on our cameras back in September. But he's heavily involved in our camera program, and is also collaborating with other crime analysts in surrounding jurisdictions and sharing valuable information and making sure that that information gets it into the hands of our officers. He's putting out a weekly report to our staff to not only talk about crime trends that we're seeing in our community, but also crimes that are happening in, Danville, Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore, Walnut Creek. So I think that this position is invaluable. I think his role is only going to expand. It'll certainly help us fully utilize all the technology that we have. And I'm really happy that we've been able to add this position. And I think that it's going to bring added value to really what we're trying to do. If we can predict crime, if we can identify crime trends that ultimately going to help us make arrests or even prevent crime, then certainly that's something that we're interested in doing. And we talked about the sixth beat, and then the last thing I want to talk about this is I really have a hope to establish a proactive, problem-oriented policing unit. And this would be a team that can really focus on issues that are impacting our community. They can be proactive, and this could be anything from catalytic converter thefts, retail theft, DUI enforcement. They really would have the latitude and the flexibility to focus on issues that we're really kind of seeing in real time. We try to do that now, but we have to rely on either our patrol staff or our detectives. And unfortunately, they've all got other duties that they're responsible for. So if we were able to create a team that has the ability and the flexibility to address these issues as they're happening, I think it would be fantastic. City of Dublin, the city of Pleasanton both have these type of units. I've talked to their chiefs, and they've seen great success with their units. This team would have the ability to work in either a plainclothes assignment or a uniform capacity. So again, there would just be a lot of flexibility. In a perfect world, this unit would be 4 officers. It would be 3 officers and 1 supervisor. As we're starting to see crime trends return, more to what they were pre-pandemic, I really think there's going to be value in creating this type of a team. We're getting close to the end, which is good because my voice is on its last leg, unfortunately. This is just a real quick staffing analysis. A lot of numbers here. I think the main things I want to point out is, again, this is comparing us with Pleasanton, Walnut Creek, and Dublin. Population-wise, we are the biggest city. However, we have the second smallest budget. And in the far right column, if you look at what the cost per resident is, ours is fairly significantly cheaper to our residents than the cost per resident in the other cities. And then I'm not going to spend much time on this topic either, because this will be part of our presentation at the next council meeting. Other to say that progress is certainly being made on the public safety complex. The police department is scheduled to be done on the early part of June, and the estimated date of completion for the entire complex is scheduled for the end of 2022. I go over there on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and as I see the progress being made, I'm extremely happy with how it's shaping up, and I think all of us are going to be really thrilled at the final product when it's done. But again, we'll be given an update on the entire project at the next council meeting. So with that, I am done, and I would be happy to address any questions that the council may have.
Can you pull that thing down so I can see who's got a hand up or whatever?
Absolutely.
Okay, I have one. Who's Mark, then Sabina?
Yeah, Chief, fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for that. A lot of good information. I've talked to several principals, high school, middle school, and elementary school principals, and they're all really thrilled about the My Beat My School program. I didn't hear you mention it in the presentation, but can you talk just briefly to how that program is going, and staffing and resourcing and support to that program?
Well, I certainly can't take credit for it. I think the credit goes all the way back to Chief Holder and then Captain Gordon at the time. I think it was their project. But what that is essentially every school in our city is assigned a police officer. So in other words, at like an elementary school level, there is an officer will be assigned and will make contact with the administrative staff. So the staff there, the principals, they'll have a direct line of contact to that police officer. They'll have their phone number. That officer is expected to spend a certain amount of their time on a weekly basis on that campus. They're expected to attend occasional PTA meetings. So really, they're kind of like a mini school resource officer, and every school has one of those officers assigned. So it's really just designed to maintain a presence, to build relationships. You'll see officers will try to maintain visibility around, maybe drop off or pickup time, again, just for safety. So that's really what it's about. And there's a lot of issues that may pop up where a school administrator may not need to call dispatch, but maybe there's an issue where they can call the officer and say, hey, this is what's going on. What do you think? Can you come by, today or tomorrow and talk to us? And so that happens on almost a daily basis. So it's a fantastic program. I think we've been able to really forge excellent relationships and partnerships with not just the district, but the schools within the district and the staff members as well. So we have been doing this since we started in 2007. And it's been going strong for the last 15 years. And I think it will continue to move forward as long as we keep seeing the value and the success. The program will continue to operate because it seems to be bringing value to everybody involved.
Yeah,
I think it might even precede us being our own force. Mark, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that it's clear the value and the success of the program is clear, and I just encourage you to keep up that program. I think the folks that I talk to find it extremely valuable and really useful and helpful, at those schools. So thank you.
You bet.
Council member, go ahead. Council member Zafar.
Thank you, Chief, for a really detailed presentation. And thank you for keeping the city safe. I know we'll all sleep better knowing the numbers that we have. So appreciate that. I guess I wanted to know if the cameras have helped in any way in some of these crime preventions. I know you did a presentation, but perhaps a slide next time tying it in with what our camera program is also able to do as part of this crime prevention would be great to learn about. And I think the second one is the community program. You didn't talk a lot about that, but I think that's truly reaching the community, and some of the things that your community program division is doing is really making sure the community is connected and aware. And what we've been able to do in one of the incidents that happened last year because of our camera, because of the community involvement, because of all that communication. I think it's a very compelling story to tell what we've been able to solve because of the whole ecosystem that you have created. I really liked your last point about proactive, problem-oriented group, and I would love to see how we can tie in again. I think I brought this up, but people have bought more guns in the past couple of years. We all saw that. And we're seeing a rise in mental health issues. So something that we can make sure to be proactive about, everybody has a right to own guns, but if we can be more proactive and make sure that people are educated about safely storing them, like you mentioned, we're a very safe city. We've got the police force that is protecting everyone. We just don't want to start seeing something which came out of a rise of gun ownership and mental health issues at the same time. So I would love for that unit to explore how we can be proactive when it comes to safety as well. The other thing I hear is that people have some of the people don't know how to drive after 2 years of having their cars parked. So I don't know if you're seeing some of that arise in people just running into things and places. And but it seems like some of the people just didn't drive for 2 years, and it's it might be an increase in some of those traffic related incidences. But yeah, thank you. I think overall the presentation was great and you answered a lot of questions, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's open up the public comment and hear from them, and then we can discuss it further. Public comment is open. If you wish to speak under public comment on this item, please raise your hand or feature on Zoom or dial *9. I have one attendee, call-in user 1.
Hi, Chief Stevens. I want to thank you and your department for everything you have toughed through this past 2 years. It was most difficult, and I really commend all of you guys to continue to stay kind and nice on the streets, but vigilant and dutiful of what you have been doing, and I'm most grateful. I do have a couple of questions and comments. The first one is about the 62 juveniles that were placed on 5150. And my concern is because of the school district is encouraging the parents to sort of like spy on the kids using different apps. I am very concerned about that. And I'm wondering how many of those 62 juveniles were actual, suicidal or, suicidal ideation, subjects. I would be interested to know how much of those were manufactured products of social media. And I wonder about the virtual SRPD that has been recently being put up as part of the remote living we have. And I'm wondering if that's equivalent to, like somebody was going to call the dispatch, and if that will continue, if our life should become more physical. I'm also wondering about the cyber crimes. There are a lot of cyber crimes that, involve human trafficking and things like that. You didn't touch on that. I'm hoping that that's because we don't have such kind of crimes, but I am very concerned about human trafficking in our city, if any. And I am most concerned about what Council Member Zafar just said about proactive policing. It is very scary because it's kind of like communist. I don't know how you distinguish proactive in terms of deterrence or proactive in terms of prosecuting someone when they haven't even committed any crimes. And then, because of a coordinator is, telling everyone that, it's likely that this person or, this organization or whatever is likely to commit a crime. And then therefore they're perceived as a criminal. That is very scary to me because we are the United States of America. That is not consistent with the spirit of our national identity, nor is that our constitutional, value. I'm very concerned about that. And if Council Member Zafar is for proactive policing, I wish her to be a little bit more clear on how she, I know that she ran for mayor last time. She could possibly become our mayor next time, and then she could possibly become your direct boss. I'm very concerned about her philosophy of policing. Thank you.
Joyce Carr.
started talking and I hadn't unmuted.
Go ahead.
Thanks again. Good evening, Chief. I just want to tell you that I have listened to your reports before. I listened again tonight, and it gives me such a safe feeling living in this city. You and your staff are just doing a fantastic job in keeping me and my family, my friends safe here. It's just a wonderful place to live. And we know that you guys are always there to help us. Thank you. And I know that Joe Gorton was our police chief before. So I will also thank him. We'll go back a few years and thank him. And then you've continued on, and thank you so very much.
Thank you, Joyce. Okay, anyone else wishing to speak? I don't see any hands. Well, I'll ask first, do we have any written comments on this? Seeing none, close the public comment. The matters before us. The only question I thought that I know there was something about a sandbox, but I don't think that has been open long enough for you to have any calls on it or cybercrime. What about the 62? I missed part of it on the 5150s. Was there anything that you caught on that we might be able to give a brief, quick answer?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, each individual, situation has its own circumstances. So it would be hard for me to really draw a common thread as far as what's happening, other than I think, the one thing we can certainly say is that, kids are being impacted, and there's mental health crises that our kids are experiencing. It seems like kids are growing up. This is my own kind of take on it. I think that they're growing up a lot faster than they used to, and I think they're being exposed to a lot of things at younger ages. And I think it's tough for a lot of kids, and it's creating challenges for them. And again, so it's hard for me to really say what the common thread is, other than it's clear that this isn't just an adult only problem. And I think that, again, as I said earlier, I felt good to know that at a local level and at a county level that we're starting to really look at an issue that has not been really at the forefront until really the last 2-3 years. And it's not just, I mean, it's everyone's looking at it. It's law enforcement, it's mental health, it's city leaders like yourself. Everyone is taking a look and trying to come up with solutions, because everybody sees that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. So I think we got some really good programs that are in the works that are going to be rolling out in the not too distant future. And my hope is that we're going to start making a difference in some people's lives, and really that's what this is all about.
And before I go to Vice Mayor Rose, I would just ask if there's anyone who doesn't support Councilmember Safar's position that we support our police, you can chime in too. But Vice Mayor Rose.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Chief Stevens, for a great presentation. I really like your statement when you mentioned that seconds matter when an emergency comes, and that kind of level of commitment that made our San Ramon Police Department as a shining star of our community services. So your leadership and your whole department is well respected within the community because of all your great services. And also, I definitely want to commend each and every task that you proactively as well as reactively take care. Especially, for example, recently the robberies that were happening robberies on old people within the Gale Ranch area and all that. So that was actually started in different cities, and at last we could able to stop it. So that shows what kind of commitment our PD shows, right? So thanks for all the service. And also I really like your showing importance on our intelligence officer, having a new intelligence officer and using technology, because end of the day, it is always the new technologies, new kind of crime keep on coming up. The trends are changing, and we need to keep up to it with the new ideas and a new thought process. So I'm glad that you are already on top of it. And I agree with our council member Jafar when she said we need to have a proactive problem direction or directive. Because once again, if we are not on top of the issues, then definitely they're going to come and bite us, right? So instead of getting reactive. So, but once again, thank you very much for all your services. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to throw something in because a lot of people miss this, Chief. I've bugged every chief since Scott Holder in 2007, even before. From that day that we became a police force of our own, a department of our own, I've asked the question, how are we going to get to 75 sworn officers? Well, back then we thought our population might reach 80. I didn't just pick a number out of the hat. We, the people of this county, voted a growth management element in Measure C that said we would have, as a standard, 1 officer per 1,000. Most cities have more than 1 officer per 1,000. Gets a tad bit expensive, but it's even more expensive when you have the problems that you have when you don't have a force like us. I don't anticipate that we're going to get 1 per 1,000, but to me, that's as if we're defunded to begin with, because we don't have the money to get to the standard that is recognized. And I'm looking at the numbers you gave us, where we are compared to the other 4 cities. And to me, it's like looking ahead, as I look at our city manager, because I gave him the same speech, is how are we going to get to 30 million, which is probably what it's going to take to run this department when we get to where we want to be, and we're pretty close to build out. I mean, you're looking at 19, obviously 20 unsworn officers. If we had the 75, it's not unreasonable to think that we might be at 25. We're looking at a 100-person department in the very near future if you want to pull this off and get the 6 feet built up the way you want it, plus this organization that council member Zafar was supporting. And now Vice Mayor Barroso, and I think it's all of us. I don't even think we need to bring Scott back, he'd support it. So this is some of the things we're gonna have to look at when we start looking at budget, where we're gonna move some money around, because you're not gonna be able to pull it off of trees. But from day one, we've been very fortunate. This is not an 83,000 population. It just showed in 2020. We're at least 85. We're the 99th largest city in the state. And it doesn't look like it's going to go down anytime soon when you look at the City Walk project and the other things that the state's mandating we approve. So I think you got your work cut out for you. I think your council just told you we're supporting the direction you're going. And if there's any last words from our council member, get me off my soapbox and let's chime in, or we'll accept the report. Sabina.
One more comment was, I know Captain Denton is probably the most popular social media personality in San Ramon. Just let him know that officers are getting popular on TikTok with their dances, in case he wants to add that to his popularity.
I'll let him know, but no guarantees though.
I'll see him Friday morning. Okay.
I just wanted to add that comment.
If that's the best comment we got, Sridhar, we're in trouble. Get us out of this hole.
Our social media presence is very good. The updates are really up to date. So thanks to Captain Carlson, especially on Nextdoor when these things happen. As soon as there is an issue happen, we see that we are getting nowadays like calls because people are working from home, and the social media it's good and bad in one or other way. So we do get calls pretty quickly, and I reach out to our city manager Garton all the time. So thanks for updates on the social media so that we can point them where they can get the updates.
Very good. Okay, if there's no further comments, I'll move we don't need a motion. We accept your report. Thank you once again, Chief. Great job. But honestly, it is dwarfed by the magnitude of the next report that we will accept, which is the city manager's comments.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, on a side note, I might mention that Captain Carlson, that this was back when I was the chief of police, I basically tasked him with no direction whatsoever, because we didn't really know what we were doing back then, to build a social media and engagement presence for the police department. And he took that on himself. And this is the product that we have today, and he can truly be credited for a significant amount of that, to the point where even I don't know if it's still the case, I think it is, that our presence on Nextdoor, the engagement on Nextdoor, we have either the largest or very close to the largest presence on Nextdoor, and then any other city around. So I don't know if that's still the case, but it was back when he started working. And so he definitely deserves a lot of credit.
Good.
Anyway, so as I mentioned before, we would bring this conversation and whether we would like to agendize returning to in-person meetings. So I'm just going to put it out there and see if that's the council's direction or desire. As you know, the mask mandate has been eliminated. However, I can tell you that the public health, Contra Costa Public Health, still is recommending that public meetings go with masks. I know that certainly one council member was not interested in a public meeting while we had masks, but this from the health department is only a recommendation. And so, at a council level, we can do whatever the council desires. And we can look at what future day, if we do decide to agendize or this or move this, I would like to go at least 30 days to allow for us to ensure that all our hybrid, we have the capability, as you know, of our hybrid capabilities in the council chambers. But that was before, I think it was Omicron hit, and it kind of pushed everything out. So I want to just make sure and kick the tires and ensure that that all our equipment's running appropriately before we actually do it, which if I have a 30-day or a couple council meeting notice ahead of time, then I don't anticipate any problems. So with that being said, I'll throw it back to you, Mayor, and see what
Let me hit it for clarification. What I'm hearing from you is you are asking for the first meeting in April.
First.
Or unless you want to stick it on the planning commission meeting and then we'll put it on Debbie.
Well, my intention would be to, let's start with the council and the commissions, for sure the council, and then we'll kind of make sure everything's working appropriately for the hybrid, and then move out to the committees, and then there'll be a discussion if we want to agendize this specifically to the committees, as long as the governor's orders in place. Maybe the committees may want to stay at the Zoom level, given the complexity of the committees with people's jobs and things like that. So that's all conversations we can have regarding this. So kind of to launch the boat, it would really be the council and probably the two commissions. And so with that being said, I'm looking to the council for their perspective and whether or not we should agendize this for next meeting and get it rolling, or do we want to stay? Because we can go without masks. And I would not be at this point a proponent of having to check statuses at a door or anything like that. But we have a large council chambers. We can easily social distance. We don't anticipate getting a lot of folks. Usually we have, half a dozen. They may stay remote if they have that ability to be remote, which they will. So we don't even know what type of crowd we would get in the chambers anyway.
Okay, I have two hands that are going up, but before they start, I'm going to play city attorney alternate here. This is a non-agendized item we might be starting to discuss, but it is something you should be thinking about, because what I just heard was at the second meeting in March, we would be discussing making it official, or maybe March 8th. Is that what you said? And I missed it, City Manager?
It would be, we can agendize this for March 8th, and I'll let Martin weigh in on. So the discussion I'm looking for is really specifically, I mean, you can explain your reasoning, but this is for an agenda item. So we will bring it to an agendized meeting, probably if it's to be the second meeting in March or the first meeting in April, we'll bring it to the agenda on our next council agenda. And I'll leave it to Martin to see where we can go with that.
Okay, and I believe we have questions that he may want to stop us. We'll start with Councilmember Zafar and then Councilmember Armstrong. And this is on the city manager's report. Go ahead, Sabina.
Yeah, so I was going to say under consent, we've already approved up to for a month out. So we're covered till till our second meeting in March. So if that's kind of, whatever the staff's recommendation is as well on how best we can come back. Like we've talked about hybrid. So, how we can come back hybrid, which hybrid might mean our meetings are broadcast, yet of the 5 of us are in the chamber or something like that. So I guess getting it on the agenda on the next meeting or whatever works best. But I think for online meetings, we're covered till our last meeting in March. My understanding is.
Sounds correct. Councilmember Armstrong?
Yeah, I was over at City Hall just today, and I was kind of glad to see everything sort of taken down in terms of all the signs and things like that for masking up and that sort of thing. But what I'd like to see when we're ready to have this on the agenda, I'd like to see a little bit of detail in terms of statistics as far as where the county is and trend lines and things like that on where we're going with that. And then with respect to the hybrid, we all seem to be in agreement in terms of going to a hybrid solution when it's time to go back to meeting in council chambers. But has there been any kind of a test run? And I know you've done some, or at least I assume you've done some administrative minor testing, but maybe even sort of a test meeting per se to validate that we're ready to get there. And maybe that's the 30 days notice that you're talking about. And then in terms of the enforcement and things like that, I think we do need to talk about what are the rules for when we go back. Is it going to be kind of honor system, posted signs, honor system, notice within the agenda and that sort of thing in terms of what's expected if you're going to enter the council chambers in City Hall versus attending versus a hybrid remote type meeting. So just a couple comments there without talking to it as an agenda item, just sort of some thoughts out there.
Okay, let's thank the city manager for keeping us on the edge of our seats with his comments, and we'll move to public comment. If you have not previously spoken under public comment, item 4, please use the raise your hand feature on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone. The public comment is open. I don't see any attendees wishing to speak. So we will close the public comment and the matter is before council member reports. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I know we missed council member.
Ladies first.
Tonight. I'm missing Councilmember Perkins tonight because his reports are very detailed. So we may not get the same level of detail tonight from all of us. I'm just, it's been good to be back in the community. We've been having events pretty much every weekend in the community. People have been celebrating. It's nice to see things coming back to semi-normal. And I know as I serve on the council, this has been what really energizes me. It's certainly energized me to meet with our residents and be there and listen to what they're doing, what's going on. So been attending some of those community events and some of our meetings. Again, as much as I'm a techie and a Zoom person, I do get exhausted by Zoom meetings all day. So I'm also excited about seeing everybody back in person in the council chambers as well. So it's interesting that 2 years ago, we were testing the norm of going online. And now, the world has changed so much that we're testing the norm of going offline, which will be, and I'm sure, Councilmember Armstrong and Vice Mayor Rose are really looking forward to having their first in-person meeting. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I had.
Sounds good. Councilmember Armstrong, you can go next.
All right, thank you. I did attend a teen council meeting on the 15th. They discussed whether or not they were going to appoint a subcommittee that had to do with social media. You know, they've created a new Instagram account, and they're looking at how they're going to manage that. But they've already got a public relations committee, so they decided not to go with a very specific social media subcommittee and just let that public relations subcommittee handle things. They also talked about they reviewed the progress on their goals for their annual report, and they discussed the status of the next year's teen council applications. That application period closed on the 16th. I also attended the Tri-Valley Affordable Housing Committee meeting on the 17th. The primary discussion was about a streamlined multifamily housing application process. This is a fallout of the whole AB 434 that was approved back in 2020. There's this super notice of funding availability for 6 different housing programs to make it basically easier for developers, better for communities, and for the benefit of low-income families to create the single, with these 6 programs, a single rating and ranking system and better efficiency and hopefully a fair process for all involved. The final guidelines for that are due out in late March. Applications will start to come in June of 2022, and then awards under this new program will start to be given out in November of 2022. And then lastly, I'll say that I just want to put a shout out for Saturday at the farm at Forest Home Farms. There's on the 12th of March, it's going to be all about bees. And a program going from 11 o'clock till 2 p.m. And it's a chance to learn about bees, taste a little bit of honey, do some bee crafts. I'll be there along with another member of the Mount Diablo Beekeepers Association. And we'll be teaching the public about what beekeeping is all about and the value of bees in our community. So I hope everyone can get out to see that. There's some other great programs going on there. Of course, sheep shearing coming up on the 23rd of April, other programs, a lot of good things going on with parks as we're getting into the spring and approaching summertime. So that's all I've got for tonight.
Hey, Vice Mayor Burrows.
Well, as the mask mandates are getting eliminated, so the community seems to be coming out, as Council Member Jafar mentioned, a lot of events going on weekends, non-stop events, and it's nice to see not only our council members but the community enjoying and celebrating their yearly annual events. And so in the community we had multiple diverse cultural events. Glad to see some of the council members during that events. And also one more thing is TVCC, Tri-Valley City Council members dinner. Nice to see all of the council members as well as our city manager, Joe. And also it was a pretty informative as the Stanford CEO, he presented about the trauma center and the importance of trauma center that we need within this region. So yeah, a lot of good informations. And also it looks like going forward with this, as the mask mandates are going to get more ease or pretty much removed. So I'm really looking forward to see a lot of community events as well as seeing you all in person in the city council chamber. That's pretty much my comments.
Okay, Sabina, you got an addendum?
Yes, couple of things which I had forgotten to mention. Councilmember Armstrong reminded me, so I need to give a shout out to the Arts Foundation. The Friday Forum film series is happening every Friday. Really amazing films that they have on the on the docket, if you will. I saw Pain and Glory, which was quite cool, and then there's a discussion following that. So the Arts Foundation recently took that on from the city and is now managing those. So do go out. It's in the Doherty Valley Station on a Friday night, and see some of those foreign film series. The other thing I did want to mention, actually, I had a chance to talk to now our Attorney General, Rob Bonta, who, when he was an assembly member, I had mentioned about one of the things which was raised today is about water and providing water with housing. And that's certainly something I bring up every time I meet with our assemblywoman as well. And it's on the radar as we talk about housing. How are we also talking about water? And there are, right, we are going through a drought, although after today we may get a little bit of rain, a hail that'll convert into water, but those are conversations we are continuing to have with our assembly members, our congressmen, our, like I said, Attorney General as well, to, as we get the housing mandates, how are they looking at the water issue as well? Because again, it is something which is on all our radar as well. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Actually, I was going to mention a little bit of it too. Let me try and get through these quick. First of all, the makeup of the Bay Area Quality Management District might be changing. There's a push to get some unelected, non-elected, I should say, people on the boards from some of these advocacy groups. We'll see where it goes. It's going to take legislation out of Sacramento. Planners Institute, the Planning Commission's version of our League of California Cities get together, is March 16th. Debbie Chamberlain's the president. She's pretty much putting it together. I'll do a brief welcome of about 45 minutes. Well, maybe not minutes, but we've been known to go for a while. The Mobility Summit that Contra Costa Transportation Authority puts on every year is coming back on April 5th. It'll be over at Roundhouse. Usually has some pretty good ideas of where we're heading in the future. It isn't that long ago we were looking at the autonomous vehicle as the big thing, but a lot more than that is going on, and we'll see where that goes. The only thing I've seen out of legislation that caught everybody's attention, and I'm not sure why, from MTC ABAG and the Bay Area Regional Collaborative, was AB 1717 Aguilar and Curry, and it has to do with contracting. And the other one is AB 1944, which will be more of a Brown Act, kind of what we were alluding to tonight, where we're going to go with this hybrid. I don't think people want to put down their home address so that if you're going to be doing Zoom, that people can come over, and that's going to be a bit of a problem. We'll see how it's handled. Tonight, we heard about the water issue that Councilmember Safar just mentioned. We usually have John Coleman come in and speak. It seems like annually, I'm not sure, but I will tell you, to all the people that are concerned about it, in 1976, we ended, or 77, we had the drought here in San Ramon that was about as tough as it's ever been. People stopped watering the lawns. We had about 8,500 people. We got 85,000 now. But the entire district of East Bay Municipal Utility District has never reached the consumption levels before that 1976 drought. So you can just about get an idea of where the answer is going to go on that one. As far as the housing crisis and being aware of it, I mean, if the district's not going to support us, meaning all of the Bay Area, if not all of the state, you're not going to get a lot of support on stopping housing for water. And I've got a stack of 4 inches of appeals that we just listened to 3 months ago. And water was not even something you could consider. It used to be the same thing when you go to this, it is the same thing when you go to the school district. Well, there's no room for all this housing that we're building. And the school district says, we got it under control, and end of story. So yeah, it's going to be a little interesting here. There are a couple other people that brought some stuff up. I have the most important thing I've seen today. I sent a copy to the city manager who may want to discuss it after he's taken a look at it. There is a couple of people we met back at Washington, D.C. that I would like to, if possible, stay close to. They sent us something called the Better Climate Challenge, We've had a couple people speak under public comment where they'd want to do it. We are signatories of the diesel-free in 33. And there is a program that Sarah Booker Stevens or Stevens Booker asked me to take a look at. I sent a copy to the city manager. If you can, please take a look at it and send it out to our other council members. And it's a partnership agreement similar to what people are asking, and it's just trying to reduce your emissions by about 50% over the next several years. And it tells you what the Department of Energy can do. Normally, it wouldn't catch my attention, but when they start talking about spending $16 billion or $60 billion, my ears perk up a little bit. So it's something to keep our eyes on and ears when we go back to Washington, D.C. March 12th, and hopefully be talking to her. So I have one person, call-in user one, that wants to discuss. Let's put it on the mayor's comments. You want to talk about my report, call-in user one? I will ask you to be brief. Please take a minute. And what is your question?
Hi, I don't have a question, but I just want to, give compliment to Councilmember Armstrong's report, because I happened to be at the teen council meeting, and that night he was completely silent. I know he was there because they mentioned it. He didn't say anything, but by listening to his report right now, I'm very impressed. He was listening very carefully. Whatever he gave you guys was completely were full of facts. And I really appreciate that he minimized his opinions. Actually, I didn't hear any opinions of his, just facts. And I really like that. And I appreciate that as the public. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that is about as good a compliment as you can get, Councilmember Armstrong, because you are a liaison. You're not supposed to be commenting. You're supposed to bring back what the information was, like you did tonight. Okay, if there is no further, let me get to the most important page that there is here. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, we are adjourned to the next regular scheduled council meeting, which will be held on March 8th. And it will be under the great guidance of our Vice Mayor, Sridhar Barros, because I will be out of town. So I think actually you should hold a live meeting, but we won't. We'll save you, Sridhar. Good night, all. A very good meeting. Thank you.
Good night.
Right.
Bye.
Right.